I mean, I would say this, but I think it is true. South Belfast is a pretty special place and a special constituency. It is, I think, an exemplar for how you want the Northern Ireland of the future and of the present to be. It is, again, most of Northern Ireland, I'm sorry to say, the vast majority of people live in what we call single identity communities, i.e. in a neighbourhood or an estate or a village where the vast majority of people are of the same community background. And that isn't the case in South Belfast. It has always been somewhere where people kind of live side by side, and you know, you knock a door and you've no idea whether you're going to meet a DUP voter or a Sinn Féin voter or whatever. So it's been different in that regard, and I think people like it that way. It was a little bit of an oasis and a protection for example, what we call in an old-fashioned way mixed marriages, which is, you know, couples who haven't come from the same side of the divide, but just generally people who don't want to be boxed in and boxed off. It's also the most diverse in other senses in terms of economic opportunity, pockets of real deprivation, but also it has the university and a lot of the dynamics that come with that, and a lot of really successful businesses as well. And it also increasingly has new communities and new Irish and asylum seekers and refugees and other people from around the world who for whatever different reason have made it home. And I have just tried to represent that, and tried to, while people are fairly clear about my views on different issues, including the constitutional question, you know, as and when it arises. It's just it's not rocket science. It's just being respectful of people's different identities and cultures, and celebrating them all as much as possible. One of the unifying things, it has to be said, was Brexit, or I suppose the disunifying thing, where 70% of people in South Belfast opposed it, and I suppose when it came to the Westminster election in 2019, that was the dominant issue. But it's really just attempting to work the common ground and find those areas of consensus, and finding practical ways to mediate when there have been issues like around, say, the flying of flags that just, you know, it can be divisive, but just dealing with those on a kind of a, you know, community consultation basis. But it's a place I absolutely love, and it isn't anything, you know, as I say, there's nothing that's put in the water or in the air. It's just about people, I suppose, choosing to live together and to do so respectfully.
I mean, you say it's not rocket science, but I would argue maybe increasingly it is, when we live in a more polarised political culture where our leaders kind of operate on a 50+1% model. That, you know, they only need to speak to their own, they only need to build their own base, they don't try and govern in the interest of the whole country. What you've managed to do is to speak regularly to people that disagree with you, and even to garner their votes on occasions. Is there any particular kind of things you do or don't do, resist even, in order to keep that balance going?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question. And you're right, at the moment they're in politics, it quite often the mileage is in the problem rather than in the solution. And you're right, we are, you know, it is about binaries and putting dividing lines in. The 2019 election, and as I said, had been an MLA for the SDLP, who would have polled around 20% of the vote up until that point. But I had always tried to be fairly broad-based, and then going in the Westminster election and building a coalition of over 50% of the vote. I like that did changed my thinking, and I needed to go, you're not just speaking for, you know, people who are SDLP, Social Democrats, moderate nationalists. You're now speaking for people who would have voted Green Party, Ulster Unionist Party, Sinn Féin, and I took that as a kind of, I suppose, permission to step outside of. But it's, I mean, you just have to apply your political judgment. I think particularly I do go out of my way to go places where people wouldn't necessarily expect to find me. You know, we you know, proactively do constituency surgeries in communities that don't have a tradition of voting for somebody from my background, for example, and where we didn't poll very much of the vote. I spend, I'm not strongly a person of faith, but I spend quite a lot of Sundays in Methodist churches and Presbyterian churches, and in talking to groups there, you know, just and it is just trying genuinely to understand other people's perspective and making sure that you don't race to the position that, you know, and you know what, the algorithm is driving a lot of these things. I think any politician will see sometimes, and I'll give you an example. If I, you know, I'm in the chamber and there's been something and I have a Barney with the DUP or something like that, and you put it on Twitter and it'll go mad and it'll get all these likes and stuff. But if you go and you make a more nuanced point about a conversation or whatever, it sinks without trace. And we all have to be slightly aware that you know, the system is driving us to confrontation, and it's trying to resist those instincts. And as I say, you know, understand, try and triage issues and go, how would I be? How even, as I say, I have really strong views about the European Union and about Brexit and about trade, but I'm trying to think, how is somebody perceiving this, maybe who feels that demographic change is all against them, and it's a way I probably would always have instinctively done my politics, but creating that voter coalition in 2019, you know, sort of mainstreamed it in how I think and operate, and I wouldn't work any other way now.